I truly believe that the best things happen when you are in the room. Like anything throughout human history that is meant anything started because someone said, I have a dream. Somebody got up and they took some sort of a heroic action that inspired other people to want to be a part of a movement. Taking that power and that drive for impact and turning it into something meaningful. And I think it's the only way that we're actually going to get through everything that's happening in the world at the moment.
Hello, welcome to Delusional. I am your host, Michelle Coyle. I am here with Brody Lee. Brody, please introduce yourself to all of our watchers and listeners.
Hey guys, my name is Brody Lee and I used to be a meth addict. I then went on to make $1 million in one day from stage at my own event. And I'm taking 280 people to a hotel being built in space, and we're going to raise $10 billion for worthy causes.
Literally the most delusional person that I know, Brody Lee.
That's me. Oh my goodness.
And I love it. I love you. And I just had to have you on the show. Can we start at the beginning? Because you have quite the story arc, right? Like quite the redemption story. So you were literally a meth addict, and you were young and living in Australia, but you tell us your background.
Yeah. So, I had a charmed childhood, like a really good childhood, incredible parents, beautiful experiences. My first overseas trip, I went to Burma and I ordained as a monk when I was 10 years old. And then within a week of leaving school, when I was at the age of 18, I started smoking meth. It was the first drug I ever tried. And I smoked it every single day for 6 years. And, I went to rehab twice. It didn't work. I fled the country to go to another country to try and clean myself up. I went back to Australia 4 years later, and then things got worse again. And in May 23 in 2017, I woke up from a massive drug overdose that should have killed me. And when I woke up, there was my mum, my dad, a paramedic, and a police officer all kind of looking down at me. And I was like, oh shit, dude, is this really how you want to live your life? And I screamed, fuck no, out really loud. Now, they thought I was responding to them, but I was responding to my internal dialogue. And there's a blessing in all of this. The reason why I overdosed, it was accidental, was because in the 3 months prior, I'd been exploring whether or not these violent, disconnected, and really scary memories that I had that were incomplete, that had been surfacing, were real, and whether or not I had been sexually abused when I was 6 years old. And we discovered that I had, and I didn't cope well with it. But as a result of that, I woke up to life again. And I had a beautiful experience of being able to really reconcile a lot of things that, like, this little 6-year-old boy had been driving my life for 25 years at that point. I was 31 when all this happened. And what a blessing and what a gift, because I got to explore who I really was. I wasn't somebody just running from a traumatic place. And I was able to really look deep inside and find out, what am I really made of? What's the metal that makes Brody? What's the thing? And so blessed to have been able to, I went to rehab again and got some more labels on the on the diagnosis and all that sort of stuff. But eventually I found my way into personal development. And I credit me being ready to receive the information that I got from a Tony Robbins event to get complete with my trauma fully, and making a decision at that event never to put another mind-altering substance in my body ever again. And I haven't since. In May, we're in August now, I just celebrated 8 years drug and alcohol free. So very, very, thank you. It's been a phenomenal journey for me. And that Tony Robbins event, I made a decision that I was going to make my life be about something, be about impact, be about meaning. And in some way, I don't want to say it was my penance, but it was my redemption, I guess, a little bit from what I had been doing to my mind, my body, and my spirit. I decided, well, for me to moved past this, at the event, I forgave my abuser. That was step number one. And in so doing, I forgave myself. And that's how I got access to joy again. And I was like, man, I want everyone to feel like this. And so we built a business. I built a business. Business did really well. We started putting on events. They did really, really well.
Wait. I want to talk all about the business and the events and
okay,
all. Cool. There's so much to unpack and everything.
Okay.
We have to slow down. We had to go back because you were trying to get clean for a long time. It sounds like. I mean, you said, so this was 18 when you started to 31 when you finally stopped and when you got sober for good. So a good long, 13 years of time and all through your 20s. And it sounds like you were, attempting to go to rehab, like you wanted to get sober. And so what would happen that would pull you back in, or why do you feel like you were struggling to get sober until all of a sudden you weren't?
First of all, meth is a really fucking powerful drug.
Yeah. I've never done it for context. I don't
I
know.
would not recommend it, but okay, so I'm going to say it's a really powerful drug and it's an amazing drug. What that drug does if you purely look at the science of it, and I have journals. So I made this decision when I was 18 because I was a nerd, right? I was a valedictorian in school. I was class president. I did all of those sorts of things, right? And when I started putting this thing in my body, which, I'd sworn in my life that I would never touch a drug, I started researching it and going, well, I know exactly what happens with the axial nerve and the synaptic cleft and the dopamine reuptake process. I've got drawings in these diaries because I was like, I'm going to research what I'm doing to my body, because I was weird like that. And so A, it's a very powerful drug. And B, my trauma was not complete. I had no awareness that I actually had that level of trauma. We explored lots of other different things, familial relationships, all that sort of stuff. But what was underpinning it was a scared little 6-year-old boy that was desperate to hang on to life. And the only way he knew how to do that was to block out the pain that he didn't even know, like the cause of, by partying, drugging, doing all of those sorts of things. And at the same time, also, like, there is a very incredible subculture within the partying community, especially in the gay world as well, of people. And I got community out of that environment. So one of the struggles was, yes, there was the chemical, like the drug is really, really powerful. The other struggle was I wasn't complete with the trauma. But then the other piece was I was really reticent to actually, like, being away from the community that I developed was tough. The idea that I would have to forge new friendships and new bonds and all that sort of stuff outside of a partying environment was terrifying for me, especially in my early 20s, because drinking and drugging is a big part of our culture. Across the board. I'm constantly amazed by people, even in our industry now, that I hear that are drugging and stuff like that. And I'm just like, wow, it's actually so much more widespread than we are led to believe by the powers that be in society, because everyone wants to demonize it and all that sort of stuff. But I actually have this is going to sound really weird. I have a lot of respect for people that use drugs. And the reason why is because everyone is just trying to get through the fucking day.
Right.
And everyone, like, these people, there's this old thing that I've heard once that, people, drug use is a slow march suicide. And I'm like, I don't align with that, actually, because I think that these people are so traumatized that they are desperate to hang on to life. And they're doing things to their body that they would never do if the circumstances were adequate in their life, if they had the support structures, if they had the completion of their trauma. But they're doing this thing that's ultimately not serving them, but it is actually serving them in the moment because it means that they can cope with their existence. So I have a lot of respect and a lot of compassion, I think, is one of the biggest gifts I've been given out of all of this. And so, yeah, those three things, it was like community, it was the drug itself, and then there was the trauma that was unresolved that kind of kept me there. And it's true, they say, like, I don't necessarily believe in like a rock bottom, like, oh, I was at my rock bottom. Like, I'd been in some worse positions than that overdose previously. But what I was at that point was that I was woken up and I was ready. Like, it was at that point, it'd been 15 years of alcohol consumption. I won't say abuse because I don't think I abused it as just used it to help, right? I think that people often misconstrue those words. And then 13 years of drugging. So, yeah, I was ready.
Yeah. So you have this moment where you wake up, mom and dad are looking down at you, everybody's looking down at you. That's the moment where you made the decision for good right there?
No, actually, I didn't make the decision for good. I made a decision that I was going to figure out what was happening in my body. And so I went on a break. And that break extended for a year. And then I found myself at the Tony Robbins event. And it was at that event when I experienced this joy of the forgiveness, of the completion of the trauma, of like this ecstasy that I was kind of experiencing in that environment for the first time since I was 6 years old. I was like, man, if I can get access to this without drugs or alcohol, I am never putting another mind-altering substance in my body ever again, and I have not touched anything since. And the beauty of the decision, which I think is really, my mother used to tell me when I was younger, my parents don't drink, and Like they did and they don't now, and it wasn't problematic. It was just a decision that they made for religious reasons and whatnot. But mum used to say to me in my 20s, she's like, when I was struggling with this sort of stuff, I went to rehab twice and things, she's like, Brody, one day you'll just decide that you won't anymore and it'll be so. And I could never wrap my head around it. I was like, nah, like that's not going to be me. And like, I just socially, I couldn't see it and everything. And it's literally what happened. I made this decision at the event and it was so final that I don't get triggered. I can be around people doing drugs. I have alcohol in my house for guests so that they're not weird about the fact that I don't drink. And I have never even remotely considered like putting any of that sort of stuff back into my life, because now I'm on mission, first of all. The second of all is that, I was given a second chance, right? I was given this opportunity and I'm not going to waste it. We're here for a very finite time. So yeah, and I don't need to. Life is rich. Life is richer. The Buddha, my parents are Buddhist. I know you're religious and we've spoken about this and there's some stuff that you've been exploring around all that sort of stuff. But the Buddha actually says that, my mother used to say when I was growing up, she's like, life is suffering, life is suffering, life is suffering. And I hated it. I thought it was so negative. Yeah. That was just her way of describing something that the Buddha teaches. And what he says is that suffering exists. And then when we experience joy, we long for the joy to stay. And when we experience sadness, we long for the sadness to disappear. And he said the suffering exists in the longing, not in the actual experience of the joy or the sadness. In fact, when you actually feel the sadness, there can be richness in it. And so what I'm here for now in life is I'm here for the richness of all of it, all of its messy middle. I've just come out of a messy middle part and all of those incredible highs, knowing that I'm very, very fortunate to experience them because I almost lost my life. And so every single one of them is vitally important to my evolution, not just as a person, but as a human being, as a species as well.
It's so beautiful. I love it. It's like the message of the movie Inside Out. I'm a parent. I had to watch that movie a million times when it came out. My kid was at the exact right age that he was like, Inside Out, Inside Out. That's what it's about, is that sadness exists with joy and there's beauty in it and there's beauty in all of life's experience. Yep. So when you went to the Tony Robbins event, because I really want to talk about this shift, this is so massive and so key. At that point, had you already become aware through other types of therapy or something about the abuse? Like you knew about the abuse, or did you discover that while you were there?
Yeah. So in 2017, I'd been in therapy for a couple of months before the overdose because the memories had started appearing. There had, throughout my life, there was a question mark, like a loose question mark that there was, some people had wondered if something had happened when I was younger, but it was never really communicated to me explicitly. It was kind of danced around. And I didn't, and I respect the people in my life that danced around it because I know that they didn't want to insert anything into my mind, right? And this had happened. But when I was in this year, I had started having these memories. And the thing about the memories, I'm not sure if any of the listeners have had an experience with repressed memories, is that for me anyway, I started questioning my reality and my sanity immediately as they started happening. I'm like, what's real and what is not? Am I going insane? And my memories as well, they were incomplete. So they were violent, first of all, the actual stuff that I was remembering was very violent. Scary as all hell, completely disconnected and disorganized as well. There was no linear nature to them. It was just all jumbled up, kind of flooding me. And I'm like, am I going nuts? I didn't have a reference point for it. And so I went into therapy, and it's funny. So over 3 months, we're exploring this, and we kind of get to a point where I accept that, yes, this happened, even in its discombobulated nature of the memories and whatnot. And the therapist, she was very, very funny. She's like, yeah, I knew from the moment that you walked in just how you held yourself, that this was the outcome that we were going to get to. Yeah. And that was devastating for me, hearing that, but also really wise on her behalf. But the devastation was that I've been carrying this my whole fucking life. Yeah. And that devastation, I think, is what drove me to the wanting out. I was just like, nah, my whole life has been a lie at this point. I couldn't reconcile it. I was thinking 25 years of my life, literally I was thinking, what a fucking waste. If this has been the thing that's been underpinning everything, I just can't cope, and I overdosed. And so at the Tony Robbins event, what happened was that
well, can we back up? How did you get to the Tony Robbins? How did you get from you're in therapy, you're exploring all this stuff, it's coming up, it's upsetting, you're trying to process it. Who brought you to Tony Robbins?
funny. So at that time, whilst I was in therapy, I went to another event called the Landmark Forum.
Oh, I've been to the Landmark Forum. That was actually, you know
So
what? I gotta pause and say, I did Landmark Forum when I was 24 and pregnant with my son Jack, who is now 19. Um, that changed my life, and it was super culty, and like both of those things are true. I had a lot of people that gave me a lot of shit about Landmark because it's so culty, and they are very culty in terms of their follow up and their marketing, and they're like wanting to get you back and keep you in.
mhm.
And the curriculum at that time, that was the first time I had really been exposed to
The
that type of
curriculum for
intense personal
living.
growth journey stuff, and like it changed the trajectory of my life, man. Like I give Landmark a lot of credit, and like I think we can hold two truths, right?
No, 1,000%. I'm exactly the same. That's exactly my experience. But there's a hilarious story around this. So, I went to the Landmark Forum because I was going through all of this stuff, and my housemate at the time enrolled me in the idea of going. Previously, when I was younger, somebody that I lived with and did a lot of drugs with and stuff like that, we used to smoke meth together and everything. He was a Landmark person, and he was also a Tony Robbins person.
Okay.
And he used to share stories with me, of how he would, like, he's going to this Anthony Robbins thing. They were going to walk across 3,000-degree hot coals or whatever it is. And he's like, yeah, we'll get a hotel, we'll smoke all night, like smoke meth all night the night before, then we'll go to this thing. And
Okay,
so
so he was into meth and Tony Robbins simultaneously, to be clear. Okay.
Yeah, right. And Landmark as well. He even had one of those, like, Landmark does these things where they go into your home, they bring someone in, you invite people in, and then they have these, like, basically sales calls, essentially, where they beat you into submission to buy. He even, like, organized one of those with me whilst we were, like, using, right? And I would leave a wallet.
That's super ethical. Just like get somebody high on meth and then sell them into it.
Well, finally, that Landmark got in trouble in France because they had, like, many years ago, or some faction of Landmark, because they were putting stuff into the air to make people more susceptible. There was a whole lawsuit around that.
They're putting stuff in the air?
Something like that. Don't quote me on that. Like, I don't want to get done for defamation or
Fine,
anything.
I'll go down the whole rabbit hole after this episode. And
yeah. There was some controversy or whatever. But and then so my reference point for Landmark and for Tony Robbins was meth. Right?
Okay,
That was it. It's like, these guys, this is a cult. These guys are doing these things and whatever. So when my housemate, at a time when I was really struggling, suggested I go to the Landmark Forum, I had a reaction. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that, because that one was a reaction to the person that I'd been doing stuff with. It wasn't to Landmark itself. My housemate was lovely, and he enrolled me in the idea of going. That's what they talk about, enrollment and everything. And I went, and I had a really good time. And I got the meaning of life, which is their whole thing. And it also really awakened again in me one of my top values. And so, fortunately, being raised in a Buddhist family, there's three values that I got really clearly from a very young age. My top value is integrity. My second value is honesty. And my third value is generosity. Now, in the 13 years I was drugging, all of those values were completely assaulted. I was not living in my values at all. And so I go to this event, and I'm having this experience at Landmark, and one of the other participants says, she's like, I don't think this is Simone. She's actually a really good friend of mine now. She does all of my finances, and she's an incredible human being. She said, I don't think this is your thing. I think Tony Robbins is your thing. And I'm like, I am not going there. They smoke meth and they walk on 3,000-degree hot coals, and it's a cult. And she's like, whoa, like, where did that come from? And I'm like, and I told the experience. She's like, no, you've got it all wrong. Like, you've got it all wrong. And I'm like, so I'm reconciling, like, I had it wrong about Landmark. I had it wrong about Tony Robbins. Anyway, so I bought the tickets to Tony Robbins on the spot because she was so adamant that I needed to do it. She's like, you need to do this. But then I overdosed, right? And I bought, and I went into rehab. And rehab just happened to be on at the same time at the Tony Robbins event that I was going to in Australia. And so I, being the person that is on this healing journey, called Tony Robbins to get a refund. And I didn't know how they do it. They had a promoter, right? But they wouldn't give me a refund. And I was livid. I was like, this is the most important thing of my life. Like, I'm going through this. And they're like, no, we'll credit it to next year and you can come then. And I was just like, this is so unethical. This is awful. Like, rah. And I was like, I wasn't angry at the promoter because I didn't know they existed. I was angry at Tony. Like, this guy
This fucking guy.
And everything else that had happened previously, like all the mess stuff, all that sort of stuff, I was like, this is like really angry. And so anyway, I reluctantly accepted it, and then the next year came around, and this is like when I was on my break, right, from everything. I knew that Tony Robbins had a 24-hour money back guarantee. If at the end of the first day you are not absolutely convinced that this event's going to change your life, we'll give you your money back. So me being the precocious young whippersnapper, egotistical person 1 year into their sobriety, I'm going to beat Tony Robbins at his own game. So I walk in there and I know at the end of the first day, I am going to get my refund.
I'm getting my fucking money back. I will sit through this whole first day. Tony will not get to me.
No, right? Within 10 fucking minutes of arriving, I was down the front dancing with the Platinum Partners because the energy in there was so electric. I'm like, I have found my people. And I just had this beautiful experience. I can't describe it. I walked across the 3,000 degree hot coals on day one. I did all of the Dickens process on day two, where I got complete with all of my trauma. I was able to forgive my abuser. I had this, what I can only describe as a biblical experience of everything just washing out of me. I'm not religious myself, even though I grew up in a religious family, definitely not a Christian family. I don't have a reference point. It was just like something remarkable happened. And I've used a description of the fact that when I was my mum used to call me her joy boy when I was a little boy. I would wake up in the mornings. Her day would start because I would be awake at 5 a.m. singing with the birds, sort of thing, right? And that was what I brought into everybody's life. And at 6 years old, though, my temperament changed, and joy didn't exist in my life to the same extent anymore, if not at all. I don't think I experienced true joy in any of that period until that Tony Robbins event. And I used the reference point. It was like during all of those years, I was so desperate to hold on. It was like the joy was like this little pilot light, just kind of keep staying alive, very, very faint. And then at that Tony Robbins event, it's like that pilot light got like poured on a ton of gas, and it was into like this roaring flame, and I was like off to the races afterwards. And I credit being in that environment at the right time to doing it. Had I gone to that Tony Robbins event immediately after the overdose when I was in rehab, I don't think I would have had the same outcomes that I've had, because I needed to get the clinical stuff done first to be able to be open to the transformational stuff and the future stuff. I think therapy gets you to a point, but then beyond that, it's like the personal development. That's where we all kick in. And so, that's how I found myself at Tony Robbins. A bit of a story.
No, this is so amazing. So you go to Tony Robbins, you have like an ecstatic religious experience, basically.
Yes.
That you fully release the trauma. You make the decision permanently for sobriety. You're never putting another substance in your body. I love, by the way, if I can feel like this without drugs, then I don't need drugs, right?
Yeah.
And at this point, you are what, 31, 32 years old?
At that point, I think I just turned 32. Yeah, okay. Just turned 32. Yeah.
So you turn 32. You come out of Robbins on fire. What happened?
So at the event, right, and so this is another thing. So I used to run in a former life, I used to train Apple's teams on how to sell one-to-many. So like Steve would do his big product launches, and then
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, sorry, yeah, Steve Jobs.
We're just name-dropping Steve.
My old boss. Just like, so he'd have millions of people coming into our stores, late 2000s, early 2010s, and suddenly Apple has a really quality problem. We cannot sell one-to-one, which is what Apple's known for anymore. And so I had the Canadian market for a while. That was the country I escaped to that I mentioned earlier. When I abandoned Australia, I went to Canada, and I trained them on selling one-to-many. And so what's interesting here, though, is that in this group environment, I was not aware that I was being sold to. In fact, on the first day, I think they made an offer, and I was pissed at Tony. I'm like, how fucking dare you? I've paid good money to be here. I'm not getting my refund off you now, and you're trying to sell me? And I was like indignant. By the end of the third day, I was at the back of the room. I was like, here, take everything. I'd invested, I think it was $15,000 in their Master University package at the time.
I'm going to guess too at the time that you were not sitting on piles of cash. Like that was not a $15,000 that you just had laying around.
So I had a nest egg from Apple that paid for my rehab. I paid for it in cash myself because I wanted, previously insurance had paid for it, but I wanted some financial leverage over myself. And I had a little bit of a nest egg. And so I had $30,000 left to my name, right? from that nest egg that was supposed to be my future. $15,000 went on this Master University. It was funny though, because on day 3, I purchased the $10,000 package for Master University. But on day 4, I heard about business mastery. And I had said to the lady, I'm like, I want to buy everything. They hadn't even made the business mastery offer yet. And then on day 4, I went back to the same lady. I said, you didn't sell me everything. I want everything. I don't even have a business. Will this work for me? I want to help people. And she's like, absolutely. You don't need a business idea to do business mastery. So I put that down. And then within 2 weeks, I find myself, and this is how green I was. I was in the DMs. So somebody in the Facebook group saw me post about how awesome my experience was at the event. And then they slide into my DMs and I'm talking about my excitement and everything. And they ask a question. Would you like to jump on a call to brainstorm some ideas together? And I was like, sure.
So you have no idea that this is a sales call and that you're being pitched in your DMs.
Idea at all. I was I just thought, I'm in this wonderful community. Everyone's so lovely and they want to help out. And at the end of that call, I gave over the other $15,000 and it was the best investment that I've ever made in my life because I started my business.
Wait, okay. So what was that $15,000 for?
It was a coaching package on how to start a coaching business.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
But
so you're now in multiple incubators. You start with your $30,000 life savings, retirement, whatever that's going to be, and then $15,000 goes to Tony Robbins, and $15,000 goes to somebody else to teach you how to start a coaching business, and that's it. That's all your money.
You can kind of see how I got in trouble with the drugs, right? I didn't have any impulse control. So, but what happened on that sales call was that at the event, there's a few little bits that I didn't mention before. It was if I can feel like this every single day, that I'm never going to put another mind-altering substance in my body ever again. And then I was and then this is all mind moment stuff that's happening through this thing. It was very quick. And I was I want every day to feel like this. And the next breath was I want everyone to feel like this. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I made the decision my life was going to be about impact. I didn't know the form of it at that point. But I also made a commitment that within 1 year, I was going to be on stage speaking on Tony Robbins' stage.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to be, I know. So the commitment was I was going to be on stage with Tony Robbins. There's a link here. And then so when I went on that sales call, I said, that's what I want to do. And the person I was on the sales call with said, the best way for you to do that and the way for you to get on stages is to start a coaching business. And I was like, okay, sure. I was green. I took it on or whatever. And what we
did. At no point were either one of you but I'm not a coach. I don't know how to be a coach.
Well, the person was pretty smart because I was in a leadership role at Apple training people. And he basically said, you've been a coach your whole life.
Right.
And he was like, okay, cool. I can get behind that. I was a trainer. That was my background. I'm an instructional designer and a trainer, a train the trainer by trade. Right. So it kind of fit. And so, I started this business and did really well. I did $100,000 in my first 10 weeks, which was more than I'd ever made when I was at Apple.
What was your premise of your first coaching business? You were going to coach people to what?
So you know how you get comfortable with your skill sets, and as you grow as a person, you start there's parts of you that get unlocked that actually have always been there, but you've not been ready to accept them. Mm-hmm. So at that point in time, all of the Apple stuff was kind of not in my frame, except for the fact that I used to manage people at Apple around their performance. And so I was a performance coach to begin with.
Okay, cool.
I helped people to perform in work. And it's the most asinine thing looking back at it now, because it was such a very small part of what I did when I was there. But we started running these events. These events went really, really well. My first event, that's a lie. My first event sucked, royally sucked.
I mean, I heard a whole different story about an event where one guy came or something.
No, this is the story. Yeah, no. So the events later worked, but this first one, you're right, because I used to run these larger training events for Apple. I was used to running events, but I was so green to the industry. This is in the days when people still use Facebook events. Mm-hmm. And so I did what I thought was smart. I boosted a Facebook event, which was a very rudimentary ad, right? And 40 people registered for this event. And I'm like, oh my God, 40 people are going to come to this event. It was a free event. And as an events guy now, I know very much how little intent free things have. But at the time, I'm like, great, 6:45, no one shows up. 7:00, no one shows up. I've got a friend and her son there with me, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then 7:15, one guy walks in, and I'm like sweating, terrified, want to run away. Didn't for some reason. Sat down with the guy, and $20,000 later, after 3 hours, I got a coaching client. It wasn't my first one. I'd already signed a couple before that, but that formed part of this, like this 10-week journey to six figures. And so I kept running events. I kept selling people in.
I gotta stop here. I gotta stop here. We gotta pull this out, because what happened there is so epic. And I want to paint a picture. You help me paint a picture for me. Because in my mind, and maybe I'm making the story better, right? But in my mind, you have, because I know you, and like, you don't do things half-assed. Your events are like sick, right? So in my mind, you have like the whole setup, and you've like rented some place, and you've like,
Mhm.
Is that what it was? Like, is there a whole, like, there's a whole setup behind you, and like you've put
Yeah, though at that point I didn't have a lot of capital to do full whiz bang stuff, but I had a space, I had a room, I had a projector, I had lighting, I had a full presentation. Like, I prepared for this event.
like
So
you were ready for 40 people to get their
I
stuff.
was ready for 40 people. I was going to give them the time of their life, and I was going to create an experience that they could never. And so what I actually had to do, though, is the really great thing is that it allowed me to flex my like dealing with ambiguity skills, and also my business acumen, and also like my trainer skill set of like adapting to what's in the room. So instead of doing
I
this,
love it, because a lot of people in that situation, the one guy would have walked in and they would have already been defeated, right? They would have been
I
like,
was. Oh no, I was.
event's over. I'm sorry, canceled. Like, sorry to
I
waste your
wanted to.
time, right?
I wanted to, but here's the thing, right? And this is the most important part. I love how I'm like swinging and everything, because you got me really thinking
Your
about
hair
this
is
sort of
really good.
stuff.
For people that are not watching this, like if you're listening, you should watch the
I,
YouTube, because his hair is like part of the character.
it's wild. So I wanted to. I really wanted to run. Like, I was mortified on the inside, but I had this moment of clarity. I'm like, well, if this person's taken time out of their day to spend time with me, then I got to respect that. And I got to make sure that I deliver this for this person, so that they feel like, the luckiest person to have come tonight. And so I did. And that's why they purchased, obviously. They saw, like, there was no one around me. They saw that it was a complete flop, but I showed up for them. And that's one of the things that's really powerful about events in general. And like, I know we'll get to this because that's what I do now, but I have a lot of respect for the time that people invest in spending time with you at an event. I think most events are done very poorly, because people, there's like 5 or 6 things that I talk about in terms of like costs associated with an event. There's the ticket cost of coming, there's the flight of coming, there's the hotel cost of coming, but then there's 3 other hidden costs that people don't often think about. There is the actual physical time that they are there with you. They could be anywhere else in the world, but they're there with you at your event. There is the opportunity cost of them being away from their work, their life, their business. And then there's also the relational cost of them being away from their family as well. So these days, because this is what I do now, I help people out with events. But these days, when I talk about that, I say, when I'm putting on an event, like, I respect the fact that they're there. I want them to feel like they've entered a different fucking world. And so in that moment with that guy, and I hadn't conceptualized this at that point. This is more like my observations now over the last 3 years of just teaching people with events. But what I did in that moment was that I made that entire room about him. And so the entire event became about his world, instead of about my pain, my embarrassment, me wanting to run and scream and cry into a wall. And that's why he bought, because I was real about it. And I just said to him, I said, hey, look, like obviously I was expecting more people, but why don't we sit down and why don't we work through all the stuff we're going to do? He got a great outcome, and then he handed over his credit card. So yeah, then the 6 figures, I did 333,000 in my first 6 months. And then I did another 1 million in the back 6 months of that year, on this stuff. And then people started asking how I was so successful.
So then you guys, because you keep fast forwarding through all the good shit. I gotta keep you like.
Sorry.
Okay, so this is incredible, by the way. And you and I have both been in the coaching world for a long time now. The vast majority of people that become a coach and start a coaching business, like, the statistics are dismal. I think it's only like 1% of people ever make more than $100,000 a year. Most people make something like less than, like 90% of the people make less than like $10,000 a year coaching.
Yeah.
And you had forked over your last $30,000 and got the fire under your ass and immediately went out and in the first 6 months made 10x, $300,000 plus of what you had invested. And then in the back 6 months of that year, did $1 million. So there's and you know, I coach startup business owners, right? There are some businesses where you can go to $1 million a year. It is not the typical experience for most people to go from 0 to $1 million in a year. That's an incredible thing to do.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know if there was anything skill-based in that other than sheer dumb luck.
Delusion. You were delusional about it.
I was completely delusional. But here's what I do know is that previously in my life, before running this business, before starting it, I was being driven by fear, right? I was being driven by this sense of foreboding, like my life was going to end. I'm in danger. I was like, I was hyper vigilant for all of my years in school, which is why I flipped straight away and went into the drug stuff. And then all through the drug stuff, I was suddenly again hyper vigilant because I didn't want people to find out what I was doing, or I might be exposed as a fraud and all that sort of stuff, right? But with this, suddenly I had an opportunity. There's a few things that were happening. One is I had an opportunity to prove to myself that I was worth something, because I'd had this narrative in my head for all this time that I couldn't do anything because I was a drug user, I was an addict, blah, 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 I was a strain on society. Like I thought my life was over at that point. So it was a proof to myself that I could do something. There was also like social proof for the world that I wasn't the person that they had seen for 15 years, my family. I had a lot of stuff I needed to make up to my family, right? And then so there was this strong desire for impact. I want to change people's lives. I want to change people's lives. I want to change people's lives. No one should have to go through the pain that I've gone through. And so what I think happened is that I switched from a fear-based life or operating system to a sheer indomitable will. Like there was nothing that was going to stop me from getting this result. And so that first year was like the golden year, right? It was like everything was perfect. When you hit $1 million in business and you do it that quickly, things start to crack.
Yeah, I've been there myself, and I've seen it with others many times.
Yeah, I had no business having $1 million.
Yeah,
I had no business.
You weren't ready. Inside of yourself with your own mind to hold.
I had no wealth thermostat for what $1 million of revenue felt like. And so that cash went out the door as fast as it came in. Now, it wasn't stupid. I didn't buy material things. I paid for travel and all that sort of stuff. I didn't do like the designer handbags or anything like that. But I didn't have the business acumen at that time for my own business. I had business acumen for helping the world's largest company become $1 trillion company, but on my own micro level, no. And so we kept doing it though. Over the next 3 years, I built a really successful business using events as the primary mechanism for us to get clients. I did an incredible event called Impact in the middle of the pandemic virtually. 2020 was supposed to be my breakout year. I had 36 weeks of travel booked around the world from Australia, where I lived at the time. And I was going to be on stages and everything like that. And I was really like, it was going to be it. I was at Tony Robbins' house in Sun Valley in Idaho in March. And there'd been some loose discussion.
Wait. By the way, we skipped over the part where like you had 1 year to get on stage with Tony Robbins. Now you're in his house.
Sorry. Yeah. This story's kind of crazy, isn't it? Like I do skip through it because it's kind of like it just happened. I don't think anything of it, but I guess it's kind of a big deal. 2 months after I finished up at that Tony Robbins event, the first one where I said I was going to be on stage with him, I was at a Tony Robbins event in New York, and because of my energy, I ended up on stage with Tony Robbins, but I was dancing and welcoming him to the stage. I wasn't speaking. So here's a lesson for everyone. Be fucking specific about the stuff that you're calling out into the universe, because I then followed him around for like a good 2 years and I was on stage with him at every event for 2 years, but not in the capacity that I wanted.
That's so funny. Yeah, the universe will give you exactly what you ask for.
Right, that's right. Yeah. And so, ended up at his house. And look, to be really transparent, that was a pay-to-play thing. I paid a lot of money to have that experience. That's possibly what I spent a lot of my money on, is things like that, to be around people.
Like most of the $1 million went to getting to go to Tony Robbins.
Yes. Yeah. The largest investment I ever made was in his platinum partnership. It was $125,000. I did that
Wow.
at
Yeah.
the 6 month mark of my business when I still had $0 in my account. So I'd paid off debt. Um, and so I came home from that event. There'd been some loose discussions about this weird virus that had been coming out of China and what that might mean. And then when I got to the airport at LA, there was, it was very weird. There was, white people wearing masks, which I know that sounds bad, but it's like my reference point in Australia for people wearing masks were people from Southeast Asia where they'd worn the mask for pollution, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
suddenly I'm saying, white people, like, this is odd. I get home to Australia and the next day, Australia shuts down our borders and we can't leave the country for 2 years. And a lot of people couldn't even get back into the country. That's a whole other story. But suddenly, my 36 weeks of travel, my engagement with all this Tony Robbins stuff and everything was thrown out the window, and I lost millions of dollars overnight. And so we had to pivot very, very quickly. Well, actually, no, we didn't pivot quickly. That's a lie. I was a glutton for punishment, but also we didn't have a reference point for what was going on. We didn't
Yeah,
really
yeah. I mean, you
know.
can't beat yourself up in hindsight. Like, we
Yeah,
didn't know if that was gonna. I remember, like, we didn't know, is this like
yeah.
a few days, a week, whatever. Like, nobody knew it was gonna be years.
No. But so speaking about being delusional, what happened is in about July or so, we kept pushing our in-person events back, and venues hated us and everything, but like we kept getting locked down as well. I said to the team, I said, well, we need to do something different. Let's do a virtual event. And like my team groaned. They're like, oh, they're so awful. People are in their kitchens, their cats are walking across the computer, and I'm like, no, 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 no. We're going to create like a Tony Robbins style event. We're going to have a studio. I'm going to keep people on Zoom for 3 days. This is before Tony had done a virtual event. No one had done a virtual event that I could see yet with any type of studio setup. And I'm going to host them for 3 days, like 16 hours a day. They're going to walk away more energized. They're going to tune in from all over the world. And my team was like, fuck no, that's not going to happen. You're delusional. And I said, no, we are doing this. And we literally did it. We had 200 people from, I think it was 47 countries tune in for 3 days to this event. I got Tony Robbins' music guy to do the music for us so we could create that experience. I had flashing lights. I did everything. At the end of the second day, I was like, oh shit, maybe I should sell something. I hadn't thought it through past that, right? I was
Did
just like,
you produce the whole event without thinking about what you were gonna
oh
sell?
yeah. Well, at that time, it was like we needed to come together. Like the whole premise of like, okay, it was called Impact, and it's like let's make this about impacting other people.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe in the back of my mind, I thought about it, but I hadn't. Like I didn't have slides. I didn't have an offer ready. I didn't have any of that sort of stuff. But at the end of the second day, I went to my team and I said, "Holy shit, this thing's got legs. We've got like a 98% retention rate here, and people are staying up all night. We need to continue with these guys. Like we've built something here." So I
Mm-hmm.
wrote down the offer on the back of the proverbial napkin, sent it to the team, presented the offer the next day, and I made my first $1 million at an event. And like they told me afterwards, there's footage of me literally falling off the seat, going, "What the fuck?" It was really interesting after that event as well. It's like the power of events and energy and all that sort of stuff. At that point, we were able to walk within 5 kilometers of our home because we were still in lockdown and everything. So, and I was living at Bondi Beach at the time, and I walked outside. And I was a different human being because I was walking down the street, and people literally from across the street in traffic stopped in their tracks, looked over, and smiled at me because of how I was carrying myself energetically. It was just insane. So, yeah, that was the first $1 million event. Long story short, what happened though is that I got addicted to this idea of impact. And
Mm-hmm.
like, what if every time we do business, something good happens in the world? At that event, we threw up stuff on screens. Every time someone had a breakthrough, we would donate clean drinking water or meals to people. And it became this whole thing. Actually, like I could bring up one of the slides now from that event. So they're still on my little stream deck here. And it was people to this day, 2 weeks ago, I literally had somebody come to me and say that event in 2020 was still one of the most impactful events that they've ever been to in their life. And so I am now doing it live in the United States for the first time in a couple of months. And it's so upgraded. It's got so many different things that we're doing. And I'm really looking at this at like, it's my highest contribution to our market. And I'm moving away from virtual events and into the live event space where I should have been back in 2020, but COVID gave us a curveball. And I truly believe that the best things happen when you are in the room. Like
Mm-hmm.
anything that's anything throughout human history that is meant anything started because someone said, I have a dream.
Mm-hmm.
right? Somebody got up and they took some sort of a heroic action that inspired other people to want to be a part of a movement. And then we look at people that we see as superheroes in our world, and we only got connected to those superheroes because of something like an I Have a Dream speech, we're going to the moon, Mandela with peace. Like, there are so many examples throughout history. My old boss, Steve, changed the world when he said one more thing and pulled out a phone, right? And so I think events are done poorly, and I'm going to change the way that they're done in our industry. We're going to create an experience for people at this event in March that is like really, really gets us back together as a species. Like, there's a lot going on at the moment, and I'm going to create an environment where people feel like they're home again, and home in their humanity, home in their connection with other people, and home in their ability to actually we're going to teach them how to do events, of course, right? But to take that message, that vision, that delusional thing that they're doing, like me telling all of them, I'm taking 280 people to space to raise $10 billion, and taking that power and that drive for impact and turning it into something meaningful. And I think it's the only way that we're actually going to get through everything that's happening at the world at the moment, is when we come together. So we've been gathering for 300,000 years. Ever since we were like walking, talking chimps, like from that date, we've kind of been tribal. We connect, communicate, and engage in commerce at events. And so that's why I'm delusional.
And I love it, and I agree. You and I are on the same page about this, right? Like, this is the Delusional podcast is just the very first little drop in the delusional bucket of a whole delusional universe that I'm creating. Master plan over here, and delusional events are going to be a huge part of that. And I am going to be learning a lot from you, and I'm really excited. I will be there at your event. So we're talking March 19th, right? In
March 19th to 21st, yes. And I've set myself an impossible challenge. And no, it's going to be probably in Florida, because it's cool.
Florida.
In New York.
That's better.
Yeah. Speaking of delusional, I've set myself this impossible challenge. I want to demonstrate to people that you can create something from nothing without any money down, without any following in a new country. So I'm starting an Instagram account with 0 followers. Well, I've got a new Instagram account that's basically, it's got like 100 or something, 200 followers on it. I'm not going to use a list. I'm not going to use any of my own money. And I'm going to sell 1,000 tickets in 100 days out from the event. And in the 100 days prior to me starting to sell those tickets, I've got 100 days to build the capital through sponsorships to be able to fund everything so that I can do it. So we're on August 19 right now. August 31 is my first 100-day mark to start bringing in sponsors. December 9, I start selling tickets, and I'm going to build this thing live so that people can see what's possible when you have that faith and that drive and that will to be able to do something really powerful. And it's going to be a phenomenal event.
I'm so excited to follow along with you, watch you build this in real time and learn. And I hope anybody out there listening, if you're into wanting to put together events and become an events type person, move your business in that direction, you should be following along with Brody, like me, and watching him do this. Like, watch the master at work, because this guy knows his shit. Brody, we are at time. I wish we could talk for like 17 more hours, because we have to talk about space and everything else. But right now,
I'll come back.
You'll come back and we'll talk about space. For now, please tell everybody where they can find you, follow you. Tell them about your new Instagram accounts.
Yeah. So don't judge me on this Instagram yet, because it's just getting started. But please follow along at Brody Lee Live on Instagram. And we're going to start launching the campaign in a couple of weeks' time. I'm going to remove everything that's on there. We're going to start from scratch. And you'll see day by day, we'll be doing daily updates on what we're doing, why we're doing it, how it's working, all that sort of thing.
I can't wait to watch this unfold in real time. And of course, please follow us as well at the Delusional Pod on every social media platform. And you can follow me at Michelle Descale. Like, share, tell your friends about this. We got cool stories going on Delusional, and they're very inspiring, and I want everybody to hear them. So please share, comment, review, whatever you can do. We're going to take this whole thing to the moon. And Brody, I'm going to have Tony Robbins on the Delusional podcast.
Damn! Can I be a guest host when that happens?
As a guest, I'm going to be very specific to we're going to have Tony on the podcast. Brody, you're definitely going to be involved. We're just declaring it. So here we go.
Amazing.
Thank you, Brody Lee, for being with us today. It's awesome to have you, and thank you everybody for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Talk to you soon.